Welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Christy Warren, author of Flashpoint. We're going to be chatting with her today all about her new release and her journey through PTSD as a firefighter. Welcome, Christy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate that. I really appreciate it.
I am so excited to have you here, and congratulations on a very raw, beautifully and powerful written book about a topic that I think needs to be shared even now more than ever. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. Absolutely.
What is one of your favorite things about summertime, Christy?
I like it being light early in the morning. I really enjoy my mornings, and so yeah, I like getting up kind of because my brain works with the light. Like, as soon as it gets dark, I get tired, and as soon as the sun comes up, I wake up, and it's just a really peaceful, quiet time in the mornings. I'll sit outside and drink coffee, or I like to write in the morning, and so that's my favorite part for sure.
Like that stillness of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I'm with you on that too. Can you share with our listeners and viewers what Flashpoint is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Flashpoint is a memoir. It's really the story of a little bit of why I became a firefighter and paramedic, and a little bit of my career, and kind of mostly, 25 years of being a firefighter and a paramedic, and seeing what I saw and doing what I did, kind of all caught up with me at once. It just I was just kind of cruising along just fine and loving my job. And then, yeah, it was like one day everything just kind of came crashing down, and that 25 years caught up with me. And the book is really about my struggle, realizing what was going on with me, and kind of getting out of it, and kind of going through the pain. And, when I first was diagnosed with PTSD, my feeling was really like, just like, let's just fix this so I can get back to work. And because that's what we do, we're firefighters, and we just fix stuff. We just show up and real quick we fix it. And I was like, just fix this and let's get back to work and pretend like this never happened. And I tried that for a while. That didn't really work at all. And I finally realized that I was going to really have to hit this head on and really go through it. And, you know, and it's really like in how I got through it, and what life is like on the other side.
It was amazing to me reading your story, Christy, of all the different accounts that you went through, as a first responder, paramedic, firefighter, and me coming from a secondary character from looking from the outside in. I'm thinking, how in the world are you okay? Because but then you talk about this, about putting these pieces in a box in your mind, because that's what you need to do in those moments. Can you speak to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of like they talk about, one thing I learned going through all this is that, we don't, first responders for the most part don't choose the job chooses us. It's something that we're really good at. We're good at operating in chaos, and the majority of us had pretty difficult childhoods, and we're really, really good at operating in that. And it's like the most comfortable place I am, really, is running into a burning building, or at a horrible car crash. It's kind of where I'm at peace, and where things are comfortable for me, because that's where I'm used to operating. And so you just go on these calls, and I mean, some of them affect you for, at the moment, for sure. Especially kids are always really hard, but you just kind of keep going on, and you go to the next one, and it's something that really fulfills you and fulfills a need. And um and you just keep doing this and doing this and doing this, and it's just kind of like you say, it's like part of the job. And it's funny, because when I started struggling, I really minimized it. I was like, what I've seen is not that bad. Like there's a lot of other people who have it worse or who've seen it worse or have had worse things happen to them. And then as I've gone through this journey and I've really looked back, it took me a while to get there, like a few years after, going through all this, like, oh my God, like what I've seen is just unbelievable. What any like human being has seen is just, it's amazing. And, people talk about going to war and, what, you know, soldiers have to do and they have to face, and it's horrific, but it's also usually in like a finite time. It's over a few years.
Mhm.
But a first responder, no, I'm not comparing our traumas or anything like that, but a first responder's career, it's their whole life. Like I started when I was 19, and your brain is still being wired and it's in your 20s, and to go through this like day in and day out and to be ready for it to land at any minute. And I mean, even if when you're at home on your days off, you get called in to go to work, and you look at police officers that their heads on a swivel 24 hours a day. They never really ever leave it. And so yeah, it's really unbelievable when I look back what we've seen and what I've done. And I don't even know if I've answered your question or not.
No, completely. And I was thinking too, like when you were talking, how it seems to be like you normalize it, is that it becomes like your day to day, it becomes normal. And so it's harder to see like that it's extreme because that's what you do. That's your normal everyday business.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's, that's what we do. Even our bread and butter stuff. Like, I mean, just, yeah, our normal stuff, bad car accidents, bad, shootings and stabbings and house fires and, fire fatalities. And that's kind of all the normal stuff that we do every day. And so we really normalize that. And, and somebody might get some crazy call, a car full of people hit by a train. And all of us will say, wow, that's a heavy duty call. And that doesn't happen very often. And so we tend to minimize, like I said, all the normal stuff that we've seen and we've done, and really don't think it's, and that big a deal. And so, yeah, but when I've looked back and really see what I've saw, it's amazing that anybody, and I'm not patting myself on the back in any way, but it's amazing that any of us can survive that. And it's like, it's no wonder, we struggle, and we, like so many marriages and families are ruined, in this field, and alcohol is a huge problem in this industry, because that's, one of the socially acceptable ways to cope with it.
Yes. When did you decide, Christy, that you wanted to write and share your story?
Well, when I was going through, when I first started struggling and having all these symptoms and stuff of PTSD, and I was told I had PTSD and finally accepted it, I was looking everywhere for something to read about, for something on it, for some information on it, for somebody else that had gone through it. Because, I felt like I was sure that I was the only person in my department that was going through this. I'm like, we have 125, uniformed personnel, and I'm the only person that is suffering like this. Or back then I used to think that I was the only person who's too weak to handle my job. And so I was just dying for anything out there. And I did find one book. It was written by a man named Clint Marlarchuk. It's called Crazy Game. And he was an NHL goalie who got his neck sliced from a skate, and he almost died. And they put him back on the ice like 6 days later, as soon as his stitches were, healed up enough. And I read his book about his PTSD from that. And he also had a tough childhood. And, it was the first time that I didn't feel so alone. I was like, okay, if this tough guy, this could happen to him, then maybe it's okay that it's happening to me. And then I also really like to write. And when I went to this retreat, for first responders with PTSD, they talked about having a journal and keeping a journal. And so I started writing in my journal. And I've always loved to write. I've I've always wanted to write a book, like even, like in high school. And so I just started writing about what I was going through and writing about calls that were haunting me. And I just kept writing. And then I was like, wow, I think I have a book here. And I wanted something for people to read, that if they're starting to struggle, they can read this book and realize that, and they're not alone. And, I wrote a story about one of the calls I went on with a house fire with 4 little kids that were burned severely. And I wrote it, and my wife read it, and she came into my office and she had tears running down her face. And she said, like, you have to write a book. People need to know what you guys do. And so I just kept writing, and then kind of had most of a book written and had a lot of people help me finish it. And yeah, I'm really excited about it.
That scene, wow, like I put the book down during that scene specifically, because I mean, I'm thinking about the kids and the mom, and I'm thinking about you, how you're seeing these kids coming out, trying to figure out how to help support all of them while waiting on other people to come, was so heartbreaking. And I'm so grateful that you were there at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can't even imagine what you were feeling in those moments.
And it's so interesting because that was just another day at work, and until 25 years later, when it finally hit me what really unfolded that day. But yeah, at the time it was just another day at work.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment coming in for you. Christy Warren is a badass. She's my hero. I love you, girl. Thank you, Melanie.
Melanie, you're the best. That's my pal, Melanie. She's a badass herself.
Welcome, and thank you so much for all that you both do. Something that I wanted to talk about is how your belief to be seen as a kid led you to chasing what you call a ribbon. Can you explain to us what that was for you?
Yeah, the being not seen as a kid and wanting to be seen in somewhere that I was needed and belonged. And, the fire service really provided that for me. And, it's funny because I wanted to be seen so much, but I also was so uncomfortable when I was seen, if that makes any sense. We when we would go to the grocery store, we were in our uniforms, and people would look, and little kids would want to talk to us, and it was really uncomfortable for me. I was really uncomfortable, and talking to the public, and it was funny how uncomfortable I was. But if I was on a call, I was very comfortable, and I didn't really ever think about people seeing me, but it's somewhere where I belonged. And and that ribbon, it's like a drug. It's something that it's where I found my clarity in life. They talk about like with athletes and stuff, being in the flow, and it was very similar to that. And I was very comfortable in that. I was hyper focused, and everything was so clear, and you knew you were doing something good and something positive. And it was like, there was like something only you could do. I could be replaced by any other firefighter that day, but you know what I mean? But at that moment, it was you and only you that could do it. And yeah, that ribbon that just, kind of corkscrews through your body was it. That might be, some people call like being, the adrenaline dump and stuff like that. But it did, it felt so good. And it just, the clarity it provided was just phenomenal. And all the woes of the day, of the world, or whatever, were gone. Were absolutely gone. And that's all you could see was right in front of you. And yeah, I loved it. I miss it dearly. And there's really nothing once you retire that you can find to replace that, because you really can't. You can you can go on roller coasters or go, go do all kinds of crazy stuff, but there's so much safety, added in it that there's no, I don't know, that just, it still doesn't kind of fulfill that ribbon. It doesn't get that ribbon going like it did at work.
Mhm. As a firefighter, when you are first on the scene, what are a few of the first things that you do?
Well, it depends on what the call is. I'll use a fire, like a house fire. So, if we're first on scene of a house fire, you're going to take a look at your scene, obviously. And there's so many different things that you're looking at, like what time of day is it? What's the weather like? Are there people gathered outside? If the middle of the night, there's a greater chance of people being inside. There's a greater chance of it spreading because people don't usually find, house fires until they've gotten pretty big at night. You're looking to see if, anything is going to catch on fire from that individual house. There's so many decisions that you need to make right away. Are we going to, do we need to make a rescue right away? Do we need to, make an interior attack right away? Is this too dangerous for us to go inside? There's so many things that are running through your mind, and you have to make an incredibly important decision with very little information. And sometimes you make the wrong decision and people get hurt. And most of the time I like to think we make the right decision just because that's what we're trained to do. But you have people coming behind you to help, and you have more fire engines and firefighters coming, and and you have to get on the radio and make a radio report right away of what you're seeing, and make sure you don't leave anything out, and you just go to work right away. And like I said, usually as soon as the tones come out of what call you're going to, that ribbon either like starts to go, or it's like, oh, it's a nothing call, somebody broke their leg, which is pretty simple for anybody really. And so it starts spinning right away.
So do you, because you were a paramedic and also a firefighter, when you get the calls, does your brain start spinning and gaining that information from your call? And then it's kind of when you jump on the scene, you kind of look at your setting and then quickly go with what you have, the information you have in that moment? Or how does that look for you?
Yeah, exactly. So you'll get a call. The first, the tones will go off, and every department's different. But for my department, like a light would come on in the ceiling, and so you'd be like, okay, we're getting a call, so you'd kind of start at that moment, but you don't know what the call's for, and then you listen for these beeps. And so depending on like if there's a beep or a bloop for every piece of equipment they send. So if you just hear like 2, it's just you and an ambulance. So you're like, okay, we're going on a medical call, but I still don't know if it's really serious. You know what I mean? It could be really, really serious, or it could be nothing. So you're kind of like you inch forward, your brain kind of inches forward, and then you get the call. And, if it's something really serious, like a child or a bad car accident or something like that, cardiac arrest or whatever, and then you kind of take those next steps forward, and then you start spinning, and then you start moving, and in terms of what you have, and your brain immediately starts, playing out scenarios that you could find and how you're going to solve them. And then if you start hearing lots of bleeps and bloops, that's a lot of engines and trucks and ambulances, and that means that pretty much usually means there's a fire. And so you go into a different mode of, okay, getting all your turnout gear on, and okay, who's going to be first on scene, and because the roles are different if you're first or second or third, and what you're going to do. And you start thinking of the area, and like I said, all that stuff, depending on the time of day and all that kind of stuff, your brain starts going down a flow chart. So yeah, it immediately starts. It immediately starts the second the tones go out. So yeah.
Wow. So we talk a lot nowadays more so about PTSD. There's more awareness there, but can you share with us what PTSD is?
So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're really trying to change the disorder to injury, because it's really actually an injury. It is not, it's not like a disorder. So when you experience a trauma, it's kind of like getting a baseball bat to your head. It actually causes physical injury. So you have this little thing in your brain called an amygdala, and it's kind of your fight or flight center. And so that's one of the things that happens when we get a call, is your amygdala fires up, like, okay, danger, for whatever, somebody else dying is not a danger, but it's a danger. It's something that you're going to have to deal with that's dangerous. And so your amygdala goes off. And so that's kind of like the adrenaline. This is like super scaled down, so nobody critique me. So your amygdala fires off, and first responders, this will happen, 6 to 24 to more than that times a day. And then when you go to a fire, your amygdala is firing off, danger, the whole time you're there, pretty much. And when this happens, when this continually happens, your brain gets like overloaded, and your nervous system gets overloaded, and your brain can't function correctly with all the chemicals that are in it, and that are just being drowned. It's being drowned in these different chemicals. And so when it'll get to a point where the injury gets severe enough that the PTSD symptoms start. So like our nervous systems are still thousands of years old, and they're not meant to face traumas on a daily basis. They're not meant for us to watch the news and see everybody else's traumas on a daily basis. It's one reason why when people ask, like, why is everybody on Zoloft? It's like, because our nervous systems are not made for these times. Technology and information has grown way faster than our nervous system has been evolving. So like I said, it's an actual physiological injury that needs to heal. And a lot of times it takes medication to do this. And that's why people are on Zoloft and Prozac and Paxil and Wellbutrin. And I felt so much shame that I would never take any, medications for this. I was going to do this myself. I was strong enough. And then once I really learned that it was a physiological injury, that taking medications for it. So I started taking Wellbutrin and Paxil. Taking medications for it was no different than being a diabetic and needing insulin. It's like, you can't say, I'm going to tough this out. It's like, no, you will not survive without insulin. So when I started taking the Paxil and Wellbutrin, like, things really started to change for me. And I really wish I'd done it sooner. A lot of the symptoms I had got better. I used to have a videotape of the bad calls that I'd been on, that, or not all of them, but from like 20 years ago, that I hadn't thought about in 20 years. And they just play over and over in my head. And when I started taking Paxil, that like stopped a lot. I got a little bit of it, but I mean, made a significant impact. So, and if you do a brain scan of somebody who has PTSD or PTSI versus somebody who doesn't, they'll look very different. Like, you can see it on a scan. It's like a broken leg. You can actually see it on a scan. And that's something that so many people don't realize, that it's not because you're weak or you can't emotionally handle your job. And, that's what I used to say, like, oh my God, I'm a failure. I can't handle my shit, and pardon my French, but that's what I always believed, until I really learned that this is truly a physiological injury. And the amount of trauma that we see, and veterans see, and, other people who experience significant trauma, that's why the symptoms are so severe, and the suicide rate is so high. And the symptoms are they're just insane. And people drink to turn it off, and people commit suicide, or people die by suicide, not necessarily because they want to die, but because they just can't take that noise in their head anymore, because there's nothing you can do to turn it off. Your brain and your nervous system are just like set on high for 24 hours a day. And then the other point I was going to bring up is how much our brains need time to heal from trauma that we see. And especially firefighters and paramedics, we don't sleep. We work 48-hour shifts or 72-hour shifts, or during the summer, during the summer, a lot of people work 5 days in a row or 6 days in a row. And to be exposed to that and not get any sleep, which is when our brains actually heal, when all those little enzymes and stuff that they really go through your brain and they clean things up and heal things. We don't get that time. And then you do that for 20 years and it's almost like, what do you expect's going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Christy, for speaking to those levels of, how the nervous system reacts. We kind of spoke about this a little bit before the show. I've never experienced things in the way that you have, but I grew up with, I have PTSD from childhood abuse and things sexually within my home. And there was definitely for me the same dialogue for a long time of like, I don't want to look weak. I don't need help. And I would just sit in it trying to be strong until, it only lasts for so long and then you break.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You can't get away from it. It's going to, if you get PTSD, it's not everybody's going to get it, but, and I kind of I liken it, like I talk about this in the book about a box, I have a box and I go on a bad call and I put the call in the box and then just one day that box is full. And, like with me, when things finally happened, I tried to put a call on the box and there's no room for it. And, you just shove it in there and shove it in there and shove it in there. And all this pressure built up and it just blew open. And I think everybody has a different size box and that's just kind of like what you're born with. And so, I know people who've gotten PTSD after, 2-year career, and that's not saying that they're weaker than somebody who can put in a 30-year career. It just, they're the box in their head or their nervous system is just built a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the song Mansion by NF, Christy?
I don't.
That one, so when you were talking, no. It reminded me of, because he talks a lot in his song about different compartments, how he would put trauma in different spaces and he wouldn't open up those doors. They would lock away inside his head. That song really reminded me of what you were speaking to about the compartments within your book.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we go on and go to the next call and go to the next call and continue on. Yeah.
What were a few of the first red flags for you to start noticing that you were experiencing PTSD?
I first started when the tones would go off, the ribbon would shoot and I couldn't control it anymore. It usually it's like, a fire, or we call it, it's terrible, but this is the way we call it, a good call comes in, like a serious call comes in, and my body would have the same physiological response of, a leaking hydrant as, a bus load of kids just crashed into a wall or something like that. My body had the same exact physiological response, and my breathing would start getting rapid and my heart rate would start getting rapid. And I was just like, what is happening to me? Usually I'm like, let's go and feel good. And so, obviously I was trying to hide that. And I remember just like furiously Googling, control breathing, control heart rate, and like and then that started happening. And then I've always kind of been a jerk at work just because I cared a lot about my job. And I just was kind of an angry person, I think, because of my childhood. And then I started becoming, I think, irrationally angry. And I was a captain and people were leaving my station to go work at other stations. And I was kind of like, what's going on? And so I asked somebody who I trust and kind of seems to know everything that goes on in the department. And he said, people are leaving your station because they're tired of getting yelled at. And I was like, wow, that really kind of hit home for me, that something's wrong and I need to go deal with this. And then I moved to, and then that's when like I said, I was like, something's going on. And then I moved to a slower station, and I was working at a really busy station and that we were up all night, like every single night. And, so I moved to a slower station, which felt like a weakness, like I was being weak by doing that. And, but that's when things really started kind of happening. I started having anxiety. I started having nightmares. I completely stopped sleeping for the most part. I'd wake up really, I wouldn't fall asleep till really late. And then I'd wake up, like 4:00 in the morning. I'm like, I'm ready to go. And, and I think what happened was, like if you have an injury, like a tweaked knee or something like that, and you're in the middle of a run or whatever, you can keep running on it. And it's like warmed up and lubed up, and you just kind of keep going. And then when you stop, and then a couple hours later, your knee like blows up and it hurts. And I think that's what happened was like I got off the treadmill and things started. I wasn't out running them anymore. And so, and then the videotapes in my head started with, it was just being haunted by these calls that would just play over and over and over in my head. And that's when I realized, like, okay, something's really wrong. I need to go find out what it is and fix it, of course. So, I'd been to a therapist for some childhood stuff. And so I went back to her and told her my symptoms and everything. And she's like, oh, I think you have PTSD. And I was like, no, there's no way in hell I have PTSD. I am super tough and strong, and that's not going to happen to me. And she's like, well, I think so. And I'm like, okay, like I still didn't believe it, but I was like, okay, fine. Like I'll come here once a week. You're going to fix me so I can get back, so I can kind of get back to my normalcy at work. And I kept working, and she kept saying, you need to take time off. And I kept working. And then finally one day everything really came tumbling down, and I was about to drive into a tree, and I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I gotta take some time off and fix this.
Mm-hmm. When you were at that rock bottom moment in your life, what were some things that you learned after the fact from that space?
Well, it took me a really long time to learn a lot of things. I learned that I wasn't weak. That was my biggest thing. That's all I could talk about for 6 months was what a failure I am. I'm completely failed. Mm-hmm. Here I was, I thought I was a, strong, tough firefighter, and I found out that I wasn't. It was like, it's all a sham. And I thought everybody would, look down on me and think I was weak. And I learned that was not the case at all. Somebody at work had said, no, we figured that if this happened to you, that this could happen to any of us. Like I was the last person that they expected this to happen to. And so, gosh, I mean, I've learned so much, before all this happened. If you ask me what's the worst thing that could ever happen to me, I would say this. And, I would rather be dead or lose my legs or just, you name it, all the things that can happen to you. I would rather that happen than get PTSD and be too, weak to do my job. But now I look back and I can honestly say it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me deal with so many other things. And it's allowed me to be vulnerable and really be myself and not worry anymore. And I don't have to be super tough and strong. And my brother was really funny. He would dare me to do stuff all the time, and I wasn't realizing he was doing that. You know what I mean? Something simple like we're playing volleyball and the ball rolls way off, into the rocks and the weeds and stuff. And I go to put my shoes on because, playing on the grass. He's like, what's the matter? You can't do that. I'm like, of course I could do that without my shoes. So he'd egg me on like that. And I didn't even realize it. And, whenever like I'd go for a run with a friend and I was racing them and they weren't racing, like, and they could give a crap. But I always felt like I had to put on this show and this air and be this something, it's like I was the best or nothing. And it's like that. I've learned all that stuff. It's just so not true. And it's just all, so yeah, life is so much better now, like so much better on the other side. I can't even begin to explain it.
What are some resources that you can share with those watching that maybe know someone who's going through PTSD or is going through PTSD themselves?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. There's so many resources out there now that it's amazing. So really you can just Google, first responder PTSD and things will pop up. I have a podcast. It's called it's called the Firefighter Deconstructed. And I have first responders on that just tell their story of getting PTSD and it's amazing. I don't want to say it's funny, but sometimes it makes me laugh because every story is almost exactly the same. Like the circumstances are a little bit different, but like their stories are exactly the same. It's like the same story over and over and over. So if you don't want to feel alone or you want to know that you're not alone, like just listen to somebody's story and it's incredible. There's a lot of books out now about it. Well, there's my book and there's other books. There's gosh, the your unions should know about stuff. A lot of departments are starting peer support groups that have resources. There's so much out there now. There's retreats that are starting up for first responders. I know like firefighters our international union has a rehab retreat center that's treating a lot of people. And then the retreat that I went to is called the West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat, and it's put on by the First Responder Support Network. And it's really sad because that wait list is almost over a year to get in.
Wow.
And they're growing and putting up satellite places. They're doing as fast as they can without diluting it at all. And they're doing an amazing job doing that. But yeah, the wait list is, and it's so tough because first responders don't ask for help until we're at the bottom. Like that's one of our kind of our rules. And just as you talked about, with your, childhood, it's like, yeah, I will never ask for help from anybody ever. And we finally get to the bottom and we ask for help and then we have to wait. Mm-hmm. There's so many therapists out there, but it's also really important to find a culturally competent therapist. To find a therapist that works with first responders, because we really are a different breed of person. And I really think when it's so hard for us to ask for help and we finally do ask for help and we kind of get shut down or the wrong thing is said to us, it can be more detrimental than ever have reaching out before, because we'll really quickly go, yeah, see, nobody really cares and this isn't going to work and, all that kind of stuff. And so it's really important to find the right person. And sometimes it takes a while, but you just, have to persevere. But yeah, there's so many resources out there now that there's a ton of podcasts. There's so many Facebook groups, Instagram groups. There's a lot of help out there. You just got to find it and you just got to ask for it. And the confidentiality is something a lot of people are concerned with, but there is some real confidentiality out there that's being, upheld and we get it. And, reach out to me and I can help you, point you in the right direction for sure. There's a lot of help out there.
What are some things, Christy, that you're doing on a daily or weekly basis that's most helpful to you through your journey?
That's another really good question. The single most important thing that I do that makes a big difference is I talk to somebody when things are getting kind of funky and crunchy. And that's something I would never do before. In fact, Melanie McKeska, who just popped up there a minute ago, really taught me that. I went through the retreat and then I went back as a peer, and I had learned everything about how you're supposed to talk to people, but she's the one that really taught me. Because what we will do is when things start getting crunchy, we're like, I'm out of here. And, we go isolate. And she would go grab me, say, no, that's not how we do it anymore. And just reaching out and finding somebody to talk to, and, not necessarily somebody to solve your problems or anything, but just somebody to make you know that you're not alone and what you're going through is okay. And it's not going to last forever. And that's something that, I've been dealing with this I got PTSD in 2014 and, and I still have to consciously make the effort to reach out and talk to somebody. And, it doesn't have to be a big therapy session or anything, but just grabbing somebody and saying, man, I feel crappy today, or I feel alone today, or like, nobody seems to understand how I'm feeling today. And that, I mean, there's so much other stuff out there. There's, mindfulness, meditation, and all that, and breathing exercises, and all that stuff is really, really great. And it works, and different levels work for different people. Like for me, I can going on a walk makes a big difference. I can just go in my backyard and just breathe. Just take a couple of deep breaths, which just kind of slows things down and helps reset things for me. But I think the number one thing is really talking to somebody, because sometimes all that other stuff doesn't work and you're still feeling kind of angst. And I found that when I finally talk to somebody, it makes a big difference.
We're going to turn it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready, Christy?
I'm absolutely ready.
Okay. First question, what was the thing you wanted the very most as a kid?
Oh, to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't I didn't feel loved by my parents. I look back and they were really young, didn't really know what they're doing, and they had their own issues they were dealing with, and I just felt like, I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel special, I didn't feel I didn't even see seen. My parents were divorced when I was 4, and I kind of felt like you take her, no, you take her, no, you take her, and I didn't feel like anybody really wanted me, and nobody was really around at all. So I think to be loved was. I had a grandmother who loved me, and she was amazing, and I think without her, I don't even think I'd be here. But I was actually wanted to go live with her, and then when I was 9, she got cancer and died really quickly. So that was kind of like all right, I'm done. That was like the nail in the coffin of kind of reaching out or hope or whatever. Is like, okay, I'm, that's it. I'm done. I'm on my own. And I think to be loved.
Mm-hmm. Thank goodness for amazing grandmas, Christy.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Amen.
What would you tell your inner child now with where you are at the moment?
I would say you are amazing, and you are loved, or I should say, and you are totally worthy of love, and you not being loved is not about you and your worthiness. It's about your parents and what their capabilities are right now. It's not about you, because I always thought there's something wrong with me. Like, oh, if I was this and if I was that and I was better, then I'd be loved. And I think that's where I developed that. If I'm not the best, then I'm nothing. And so I think that's what I would say is you are absolutely worthy of love, and it's not about you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank
That
you.
you are, Christy. That you are.
Thanks.
What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried, or you've just tried?
The oddest food combo? Oh my goodness. That's a tough one. Oh my goodness. I don't even know if I can. I'll put anything in a taco. I'll tell you that. I mean, I'll put leftover lasagna in a taco and some hot sauce. So maybe that's it. I'll put just about anything in a corn tortilla and with some hot sauce in there. Like really anything.
Mel's agreeing with you. She's saying she will eat anything.
Shut up, Mel.
But I'm visually, Christy, I have never done lasagna in a taco with hot sauce, but now I kind of want to try. Like that's got its own appeal for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What would you call
leftovers?
that?
La taco. I don't know.
I'm going to go make a Lataco, and anyone else who wants to make a Lataco, take pictures and we'll send them all to Christy.
That's awesome. I'd like to see your Latacos.
Before we end today, Christy, can you share with our listeners and viewers what living a creatively abundant life means to you?
Oh my gosh. It means a lot. I never thought of myself as creative, and like my job that I felt like I was really good at, I didn't think of as being creative at all. It's like you kind of sit around and you react to what happens in front of you. And all first responders can say this pretty much, I'm sure, is like we're not planners, or we have a hard time finishing projects. And being creative is like something I'm just starting to do in my retirement. And, even if it's something as silly as coloring or whatever, I don't know. It's like, it frees your mind. It's so nice. It's like, you don't, it's like you get out of the confinement of like, okay, I have a house on fire in front of me and I need to do all these things. I'm reacting to it. It is dictating what I do. But being creative is the opposite, is like, I am dictating what is going to happen. And I really enjoy that. I really, really enjoy that a lot. And it's like using a whole other half of my life, because it's been one way for so long, and you really see so much else that's out there. I really like it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an honor chatting with you, Christy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a great chat. I really, really enjoyed it. And I really appreciate you having me on, just to spread the word, because there's so many people out there that are suffering, even that aren't first responders. And it's just so important to me that people get help, because there is so much help out there, and life is so much better on the other side.
Where can they find you, Christy, if they have any questions after the show about your book or about their experiences?
I have a website. It's ChristyEWarren.com. So like that book is the author spelled with an E in the middle of it. It's my website. There's all kinds of info, and then an email address for me on there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, all those places that I have to be to promote my book. You can see how much of a fan I am of it. So you can find me all over the place, and please reach out if you have any questions, or is there anything I can do for you, or anything like that. And you can find my book anywhere that books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, independent bookstores like the bookshop.org has it. So just about anywhere.
Thank you so much. And we will leave the links down at the bottom so it's easy access to find Christy. Remember, as you go about the rest of your week, to find the things that are working for you. You are the creator of your own story. What steps will you take next? Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much again, Christy.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it.
Have a beautiful week.